priorities in mitzvahs be'adam l'chavero, priorities in chesed. So we mentioned the Rambam's opinion is that Yerarli, it appears to me, which means he doesn't have a specific Gemara, but based on his, maybe it's better based on his whole knowledge. He says it appears to me that if you have a conflict between Nicham Avelim and Bikur Cholim, so the Rambam says you do Nicham Avelim first. He says because Nicham Avelim, Bikur Cholim is only for the living, is Kavod Achai, is a mitzvah for the Chai, but Nicham Avelim is for the Chai and for the Mace.
Right, and at that time, I couldn't think clearly enough about the Mishnayos and Peah. Later I thought about it, and the order would suggest that the which way is it now? Which one is first? Bikkur Cholim or
The Rambam says Nicham Avelim.
Yeah, keep it going towards the end.
And then which is first, Bikkur Cholim or?
Well, that's exactly what I can't remember right now. But the actual notion is brought down. It's the reverse. No, before the Talmud Torah, we have to get to the anti-penultimate one.
Well, Talmud Torah is the last one.
No, there's some more. The Spires, the boys, so Mitzvah and Tefillah.
Yeah, Svardim have more on this Svard, yeah. I'd have an Ashkenaz.
You're asking the wrong person.
Okay, but I figured because I didn't say it at the time because I wasn't sure about the order, but later I looked it up, the order was reversed. So we do have the question was what takes priority? So one would think whatever's mentioned in the Mishnah first would take priority. Whether that's reasonable as assumption, I don't know, but one might think that.
You're saying to the order says Bikkur Cholim first, you're saying?
Yeah, something like that. And therefore, that would tell you which one takes priority.
Right,
or nobody said that last time.
Right, or there could be an issue of maybe either or, depending if you're going to do. There'll be differences in terms of whether you're doing both or you're doing.
Well, assuming you only have the time to do one. That's always so otherwise you can always do both.
Right, it's different because we have a general call, and that's the whole issue. Tadir v'sheino tadir. That's the issue we had. Let's say by Chanukah, that we have 3 Sifrei Torah, so that we know you read Rosh Chodesh then Chanukah. Even though the Gemara says if you only have enough money to buy near Shabbos, near Chanukah, or wine for Kiddush, the Gemara says Persume Nis. Well, Sholem Bayis wins, you buy near Shabbos, but your second choice is Persume Nis, so you go with the near Chanukah. So Tosas says that our Seder HaKriya is out of order then, Persume Nisa, so Chanukah should be before Rosh Chodesh. So then the different shittas in the Rishonim, some say, you're right, when do we say Persume Nisa Adif is only either or? But Tadir, it's just, Tadir, it's a sequence. If you're doing both, then you do Tadir first. And others say no, it doesn't make a difference. Persume Nisa Adif wins all the time. And we said the reason why you read it last is you want to read for the Haftorah. Or Simba Halacha by Tadir, the Gemara in Brachas talks about davening mincha. Well, we know the halacha is we usually daven Shacharis Musaf and mincha, because usually we daven Musaf in the morning before the Zman mincha. However, what happens if you didn't daven Musaf? You have Musaf Kol Hayom, so it's 3 o'clock in the afternoon. You haven't daven Musaf or mincha. It's a discussion in the Gemara. We paskin mincha goes before Musaf because of Tadir Sheino Tadir. Tarder Kodem. So the Shaila is, not, except the Rambam others point out, if you're davening B'tzibur, you shouldn't switch around the order because you're going to confuse the people. They'll say, wait a second, this week I daven Mincha before Musaf, and last month I daven Musaf at 8 o'clock in the morning. I guess I could daven Mincha now, or whatever else to come up with. Doesn't take much to confuse people. And therefore, when you're dealing with the Rabbim, we want to keep the order. But if you're davening b'yechidus, so you should daven mincha first and then musaf. So the shaila, the achronim, the Odibhu, the others discuss is what about the following case? You only have, it's right before shkia, and you only have time to daven either mincha or musaf. You only can daven one. The time you finish one, the zman is over. So what do you daven first? So some say, well, pashtus, tadir, you daven mincha first, because tadir v'sheino tadir, and others say no. Tadir v'sheino tadir is all things being equal. But if you have another factor involved, what do you have a factor here? The difference is, mincha there's a din of tashlumin. Mincha you can make up if you missed. Musaf there's no tashlumin, so post can bring down, the Magen Avraham brings down that perhaps you should daven musaf first, because musaf you can't make up. So I'm just pointing out, within the issue of tadir, it's the same issue. Some say tadir, v'sheino tadir, whether it's either or sequence. And others trying to make a distinction between, so we'll have to see on all these seder, perhaps we're only talking about either doing one or doing both. We'll have to see. So to review, and we'll move on to the Rambam. Right, you do nicham avelam first because of double kindness, kavod achai and kavod ames. And how do we know where's the kavod ames? How do we know nicham avelam has anything to do with the mace? So that's the Gemara in Shabbos. I think Kuf Membeis, the end of Shabbos, the Meiri points out as well that the Gemara says that if someone dies and doesn't have anyone to sit shiva, so 10 people gather together and sit in the house and they do nicham avelam. And Meiri points out that's the Indian of nicham avelam on the mace. It's because there's no one there. There are no kruvim. There's no one, no kids. There's no one around. It's a special halacha of nicham avelam for the mace. So they point out that, so we see the Rambam says a double kindness. However, the kashas they ask you have from there, but the Or Sameach he has from a Gemara in Sukkah. The Gemara in Sukkah on Daf Mem Aleph, the Gemara talks about Anshe Yushalayim. We know there's a mitzvah of L'kakta Machem Yom Harishon, and Minatorah you shake the Daled Minam one day, but Midrabanan we do it Zechel Amikdash, we do it all 7. So however, there was a minig of Anshe Yushalayim. I don't know if the minig exists today or not. There are very few where it's tefillin and talis, so maybe you might find someone, I don't know. But the minig of the Anshe Yushalayim was to walk around with the Daled Minim all day. And in fact, one in the Raya to bring from Rashi. Rashi says, what do? You're wearing your tefillin, you're shaking the lulav. Raya, you wear tefillin on Chol Hamoed. That's a separate discussion. But they point out, so the goes to what did they do? So the Gemara says, and they went around, they give the list of things. Umavaker cholim v'nicham avelam. They say first bikar cholim, then nicham avelam. So the Or Sameach says it's against the Rambam. The Rambam says nicham avelam takes precedence, and here the Gemara in Sukkah says you do bikar cholim, and afterwards you do nicham avelam. In fact, so much so that the Rush is bothered. We'll see why soon. The Rush has a different girsa. He has the girsa, no. It's nicham avelam and bikar cholim. That would be great if it was the Rambam, but if you look at the Rambam, and the Rambam brings down this halacha, I think in Hilchos Avel, he leaves the original girsa against him, or we'll see it's not obviously not against him, we have to see why it isn't against him, but the Rambam leaves the girsa we have in the Gemara, bikar cholim and then nicham avelam. So that's the kasha, the Or Sameach, yes, on the Rambam. Where does the Rambam? The Rambam is saying Yarali. It appears to me he doesn't even have a Gemara, and here a Gemara seems to be fakert against him. So how do we reconcile the Rambam with the Gemara in Sukkah? So Rav Soloveitchik and others point out as follows. We know there's a famous Gemara Moed Katan we've spoken about many times in different contexts about no avelis on Yantiv. That the mitzvah, the Rabbim of Simchas Yantiv, beats out the mitzvah diyachid, the private affair of mourning. And the Machlokes Rambam and Tosfos, how you learn the Gemara, the Rambam holds avelis Yom Rishon's daraisa, Simcha even Bizman Hazeh daraisa. So you just plug in the Rambam, the mitzvah daraisa of Simcha the Rambam beats out the biblical private mitzvah of avelis. And according to Tosfos, it's the opposite. The Tosfos sheet is Bizman Hazeh, Simcha is only to Rabbanan, so the public mitzvah Simcha beats out the private mitzvah of avelis. However, you learn it, the conclusion is the same, that there is no avelis on Yantif. So this, yeah.
The first day is the rice. Are you referring to Shiva or Aninus?
I'm talking about Shiva.
So Aninus is the rice in the first day of Shiva also.
Yeah, well, Aninus, that's a discussion in the Gemara Zvachim. We don't, Aninus in terms of carbon, that's the Shaila. Aninus, right? Aninus, they talk about Aninus Laila, but we don't have that din we don't have today, meaning we don't have the din of the Karbanas, but we only have the mitzvah, the din Rabbanan of the Petur mitzvahs. Bishamesu, Rav Soloveitchik said it, even the Shulchan Aruch this calls it Hilchas Aninus, but it's not really Hilchas Aninus, it's Hilchas Mishamesu Mutuhana, but it was too long to write, so they just wanted to keep it simple. But that's the din the rice of Aninus we don't have, but you're right. That's the right also.
Lo achalti be'oni.
Right, lo achalti be'oni, right. That's another discussion which we'll get. The Rambam, when do the din of avelis kick in? Do the avelis kick in immediately at Misa? or the dinim avelis don't kick in into kfura. I'll get to that in a second. But I'm talking about avelis yom rishon when I was talking about. But in Achnama, Aninas is deraisa, and the discussion in the Gemara about the first night, whether Aninas in the first night is also the Gemara in Zvachim talks about it over there with Aaron and the whole Kachata Sayom, etc. So either way, so we said there's no avelis on Yantif. But what does that mean, no avelis on Yantif? So the Rambam writes, no avelis at all. When we say no avelis, no public mourning and no private mourning. And the Rush disagrees and says, no, there's avelis b'tzina. It's like Shabbos. Everyone agrees. We know Shabbos is a minyan shiva. We have avelis b'tzina on Shabbos. That everyone agrees to. On Yantiv, it's a machokas, the Rush and the Rambam. Rambam says there's no avelis whatsoever. The Rush says you do have avelis, you have avelis b'tzina. So the question is, according to, there's a Mishnah Moed Katan which says, and no one disagrees, everyone has to agree with it, that there is nicham avelim on Yantiv as well as Shabbos. That's a Mishnah, explicit Mishnah. No one's cholek. There's a din of nicham avelim on Yantiv. So bishkoma, according to the Rush, of course, why not? The basic, fundamentally, is that you're a chovas, your gavras and avel. It's just a pragmatic. You only do a b'tzina naba fahesia, but so you can discuss nicham avelim because there's avelis. But according to the Rambam, the kasha is, if you say there's no avelis at all, how could you have a concept of nicham avelim, which is nicham avelim on Yantiv, which the Mishnah says you do? So that's what they point out. The Rav point out to others that there are two aspects, as we said, of nicham avelim in the Rambam. The Rambam says nicham avelim takes precedence over bikor cholim because of the double kindness, chesed shel chai v'chesed shel meis. However, on Yantiv, ein achanami, according to the Rambam, there's no kavod achai, there is no nicham avelis for the chai. That's midin avelis. That doesn't exist. It's only the second aspect of nicham avelim on Yantiv that only applies out kavod hameis. So it fits in very well. It's the Rambam. So with this, the Rav answered up the kasha. The Rambam says it appears to me that nicham avelim beats out bikor cholim because it's a double kindness, kavod achai, kavod hameis. The Gemara in Sukkah says bikar cholim, and then the Rav says no. What are we talking about? It's the Rambam with Shitason. It's Yantif. Obviously, if you're shaking ulavim and it's talking about cholamite over there or Yantif, so therefore we're talking about there is no shiva, there is no nicham aveim v'chai. We're only talking about kavod hameis. So the Rambam agrees. Bikar cholim, which is kavod achai, beats out nicham avelim, which is only for the mesim. It's only because of the double kindness. The normal case of nicham avelim under b'chol, that the Rambam says nicham avelim wins. But ein achanami, the Gemara in Sukkot is talking about Yantiv, so there's only the special nicham avelim for the meis, and that's not though bikar cholim for the chai beats out meis. And the Rush Rashitasan, the Rush holds there is nicham avelim on Yantiv. So therefore the Rush writes, here's the gear. So even on Yantiv, nicham avelim beats out bikar cholim because the Rosh Rashitasan who holds there is a concept of avelos on Yantiv. You have kavod achai and kavod hameis. And with this, the Rav said there's another machokas Rashitasan between the Rambam and the Rush on the issue you raised.
So why would the Rambam differentiate? So the Simcha D'Rabim is docha the avelos.
Right, the din
person, yeah.
The din of the chai, because
why the mace not?
No, because that's
the mace not.
That's the Rambam's warning and the others that's not a din. That's not part of the din shiva. This classical din of. In other words, the chiddush to say there's a concept of kavod hameis. That's the din because someone who doesn't have there's no avelis going on. Someone died. There's no mourning. And you go ahead, independent of the din avelis, there's no shiva, and nevertheless you're going ahead and doing, so it's not this classical din. No, why? That discusses what special din for the neshama and the how. I mean, that's a good question. They don't explain why exactly. That'll be more Kabbalah, but I mean, halachically the concept exists. The Talmud Dover needs more explanation. I agree. So they point out that's why it is. You have. So according to the Rush, you have both nicham avelim, kavod achai, and kavod hameis. So even on Yantiv, that beats out bikar cholim, and that's what the Rav explains. We see, according to the Rambam, you can't separate shiva. If there's no shiva, you can't have nihugei avelis. But according to the Rush, clearly you can. There's no Shiva during Yantif, yet you still have Nihugi Avelos. So the Rav says it's Goshitason. It's the
So what form does the Nicham Avelim take if they're not saying Shiva?
It's only out that din of whatever the din of out covered amaze. Which
yeah,
is,
but what form does it take? What does one do?
no, so you still, no, you still, right, that, the halach is there is Nicham Avel on Yantiv, so they point out you do things maybe a little differently, but they, you know.
I mean, the Sfardim do it in Shul, where the Avelim have a special place.
We on Yantiv, you mean, or all the time?
Well,
what are they doing in Shul? You mean like not
on Shabbos?
On Shabbos, okay.
On Shabbos, and people
like the minhag Friday night. You mean that we have like right before we accept Shabbos? That minhag you mean like it's like the Ava goes out during Kabbalah Shabbos? No.
Oh no,
Well,
that's before Shabbos.
Right.
That's before, no, there's a special seat in the front.
Well, I guess right. It's supposed to be before Shabbos anyway.
The Avelim sit on the left.
Oh, you mean before? Before Kabbalah Shabbos, you walk in and you.
No, during Shabbos.
Oh, during Shabbos.
You
Okay.
move your place to sit close to them, and then you come back to your own place, and then other people. Everybody takes a turn at being close to the Avelim, who are at the on the left side of the Orna Kodesh. And if it's a Simcha, they sit on the right side of the Orna Kodesh, and again everybody goes by to share in the Simcha and the other and with Avelim to share in the Avelos.
Oh, interesting.
That's on Shabbos. It's built that way.
Yes, that fits in. It's a nice minhag. I mean, I haven't seen
That's
it, but it makes sense. You know, I mean, there is. Yes, I'm saying it fits. So it fits in. I mean, you should do nicham. There is a mitzvah of nicham avelim on Shabbos, and yet they point out maybe not to the same extent. You know, in terms of it's hard to make a lamais in terms of the kavod achayv, kavod ameis, but they do point out there is some differences in terms of nicham avelim on Shabbos and Yantiv versus Bechol, but that makes, you know, it's a nice minhag. It makes sense then, because everyone, that's part of there is nicham avelim on Shabbos and Yantiv according to everyone.
Yeah. So, but it could be that Yom Tov is different though, because you don't have the mitzvah of Simcha on Shabbos.
No, right, no, there's a difference in terms of Ol Minyan Shiva. Shabbos is Ol Minyan Shiva, but we still only have Avelis B'tzina. But Yantiv, well, that's according to the Rush, Yantiv's the same. But according to the Rambam, it is different. But it's only out covered. I mean, how it manifests differently, you know, that's a discussion practically how you can know the difference. But according to the Rush, it should be the same, because he holds apparently there's not a steer according to the Rush to have Avelis B'tzina on Yantiv, because Yantiv is clearly a mitzvah simcha, and yet he still says there's a concept of
It's the Rush?
Yeah, the Rush also says Avelis B'tzina. You know, another reason. That's what the Rav pointed out. The question is, can you separate, could you have Nihug Avelis outside of Shiva? That's the issue here. Like, someone dies, to the Ramban and Rush say you start the Nihugi Avelis right away, except obviously you're allowed to leave the house to go to the funeral, whatever you have to do, but the Nihugi Avelis begin right away. The Rambam says no, it doesn't begin until after the Kvura. When you start, the Rambam says you can't separate Nihugi Avelis from Shiva. You only can have Nihugi Avelis, it's a din within the Shiva. And the Rush and then the Ramban clearly hold not that way, that you can separate, you can have a concept of Nihugi Avelis, like you do on Yantif, outside the context of Shiva, as well as Kodem Kvura. You could, even though it's not Ola Minyan until after the Kvura, Stimas Agolel, nevertheless, the Rush and the Ramban hold there is a concept of Nihugi Avelis independently. So that's what the Rav pointed, that's what she taught him, but then the Kuda was, in priorities and chesed, so ordinarily Nicham Avelim wins because of the double kindness. However, on Yantif, where you only have Kavod Mace working, so Bikar Cholim, which is Kavod Achai, beats out Nicham Avelim. And according to the Rush, who holds you have both, he says even on Yantif, Nicham Avelim beats out Bikar Cholim, because even on Yantif you have the Chaya and the Mace working for Nicham Avelim against only the Bikar Cholim.
So you're saying according to the Rush, from the time of Misa, even before the Kfura, there is.
Yeah, that's this Ramban and Rush that the Nehugi, the dinam of Avelis kick in right away.
The whole question is whether there's Nechama for an Oneg. The fact is that they...
No, I didn't say Nicham Avelim, I said the Nehugi Avelis.
Right, but there's no...
That's what I was going to ask. So there's no mitzvah, there's only the Isuri.
No, exactly, only the Isuri Avelis.
Or Misa, Nefona, you can't be Menachem.
Right.
Yeah, there's no Nicham Avelim, no, I'm saying, but the Isuri Avelis...
This is one of those cases where we follow the Rambam and not the Rosh.
In terms of
The Maisa.
Right, that we assume the Nehugi Avelis kick in right away?
No, we don't. It starts with Kfura.
No, but everyone agrees the Shiva begins. No, there's no machlokas when Shiva begins. Everyone agrees Shiva begins after the Kfura.
For example, wearing shoes. It only starts after the Kfura.
I know, that's because practically just to go ahead and do the Kfura, it's a special din that you could do the things, according to those who say that the Israel Avelis kick in, but that's only on things that aren't going to affect you doing the Kfura.
You don't sit on the lower chair.
No, I'm saying, well, I guess that would be, no, because that would be things that would get in the way of...
Sitting on the lower chair.
Right, I guess we have to think what exactly Avelis does apply. Like, right, those like something, whatever it is, we could sit down and look at the Shulchan Aruch, but the things that would not interfere with you being osek in the Kfura, those Nehugi Avelis would apply, whatever they might be. As opposed to the Rambam, that the Nehugi Avelis don't even begin until after. Everyone agrees you don't start counting until after the Kfura. The Chiddush of the Rush and the Ramban is you can have the concept of Nehugi Avelis outside the context of Shiva. There's no machlokas. Shiva is repaskin. Shiva happens after the Kfura. That's not the machlokas. The machlokas is could you start the Isuri Avelis before the Shiva or not?
So according to the Rambam, you could play music beforehand.
Assuming that
But I mean, you could.
Yeah, assuming right, it's not part of the Yisrael Aminus, yeah. Yeah, because there's no... Right, you're saying, right, something, because assuming music is also for an Avel, but let's say it's not for an Onin. Anything that's mutter for an Onin, and not, so then that person would be able to do still. Right, that would be, music would be one, yeah.
The lesson that's used, but in case of the person who dies and there's no Balaam, they say should still have it, you sit for a moment or whatever. But did they use language of Nicham Balaam there? For that case?
The Gemara, it says right, I think you gather the 10 people and I think it has some much of Nechama, I don't know, but they have to check the exact question.
The language of Nicham Balaam, I always wondered about it. In other words, I know there's a concept that there's Nicham Balaam, and then there's a question of whether it is also gives Nechama to the Neshama. But I wondered whether it was because, is you actually give a Nechama to the Neshama directly, or it's because you're Menachem the Avelim, gives a Nechama to the Neshama. Because the language of Nicham Avelim is interesting. In this other case, it's like really you're doing it for the Neshama, like on Yontif, you're doing it for the Neshama. But what you're doing is you are being Menachem the Avelim. Like the action is that you were trying to be comfort the Avelim, but your motivation is really to get to the Neshama, or that's the halachic motivation. But the action is still Nicham Avelim. You're being Menachem the Avelim. But in the case with the
but there are no Avelim.
It's not really Nicham Avelim. It's something else.
Right. They're using the term more loosely or liberally that we
That's what I'm wondering.
Right. Right. That's how, because the Meiri also has that. The Indian for the Neshama and like it's the honor for the maze. Right. So it's not the classical Nicham Avelim. Right. But that's what. So we see priorities within Chesed. We see choices. Bikar Cholam Nicham Avelim. What about, I want to discuss, what about the opposite side? Not Chesed, but the opposite. Let's say in terms of priorities, the lesser of two evils. For instance, is that what's worse? Let's say pain versus shame. Let's say you could alleviate someone's pain, or you could alleviate someone's shame. In other words, I'll explain it. Let me just give a little haftarah, and then I'll point out the apparent contradiction in the two Gemaras, and we'll try to give an answer. We know there's a concept of the big three, Yarog Ve'al Yavor. There's a concept that for the three cardinal sins, Gila Rayish, Shvichas Damim, Ritzicha, you go ahead and Avodah Zarah, and you go ahead and, one has a mitzvah of Kiddush Hashem. We could tie it into this week's parsha with the frogs and Hanani Mishael Barzaya, the Gemara Psachim that they learned from the Hanani Mishael Barzaya learned, they jumped into the fire first, they learned the lesson from the frogs. The frogs who went into the ovens, whatever, we could discuss more next week when we get into Yarog Yavor. But either way, so there's a concept of the big three, and there's a concept that we shouldn't bring down about Bizrayu. That means something that could lead up to the act. So some Rishonim point out about more others that perhaps that's also Yarog Yavor. We know on the 610 mitzvahs, it's Yavor, it's better to violate Shabbos, violate kosher, whatever it is, and better to violate one Shabbos, you can live many more, and etc. And that makes a lot of sense. That better to do it one time, and you can keep it the rest of the time. However, when it comes to the big three, that's the exception to the rule. Why the big three? So that's what the Vilna Gaon points out. That really there are three categories. We always talk about two of them: commandments, but Adam l'makom, commandments between man and God. But Adam l'chavero, interpersonal, like the two meluchos. So we know that when it comes to, let's say, avodah zarah. So avodah zarah, the classic but Adam l'makom is, let's say, karbanos, praying to God. So if you want to go to the opposite, all the way on the other end of the spectrum, you can do a lot of things, but ultimately the worst. So the B'nai L'makam is you go worship, you do your Oved Avodah Zarah. So what Chazal are telling us, better to die al Kiddush Hashem than have the stain of Avodah Zarah in the Nishma. And similarly also by Ritzicha, we know there's been Adam L'chaveiro, be nice to people, and then there's cursing them, hitting them at the. But when have you gone? What's the end of the line? B'nai L'chaveiro, you kill, so you murder someone. So Chazal said better to go al Kiddush Hashem than to, normally it's better to violate what it is, but so what's Gila Arayis? That's what the Vilna Gaon introduces, a third category, bet Adam Liatzmo. That basically, you hear who you're hurting, especially if it's two consenting adults, so Chazal are telling us you're killing yourself. It's and that's who you're hurting. In fact, Sholosh Zvar Omed, Torah, Avoda, Gemilas Chasadim, Avoda, that's B'nai L'makom, Gemilas Chasadim, and Amachavero, and Torah also, Yaakov, they have a whole discussion, different categories. But those are the big three. When you've broken the line, you have to give up your life. So there's a concept of Abizrayu. So let's say when it comes to, let's say, Araya, so some say maybe Chivuk, and maybe hugging and kissing, there's that Yarog Ve'yavor. So then you'll have some Rishonim might say the Chibuk and Nishuk, that's also Yarog Ve'yavor. What about by Avodah Zarah? Let's say, how could you have Abizrayu da Avodah Zarah? So the Shulchan Aruch brings down a halacha. You're not permitted to, let's say, if someone puts a gun to your head and wants, and you could save your life by lying and saying, I'm an Oved Avodah Zarah, the Shulchan Aruch says it's Yarog Ve'yavor. You can't tell someone, I am a Oved Avodah Zarah. In fact, the post can point out that's direct. We can do many things indirectly. You're allowed to have forged papers. I think during those days also, they used to have many papers, RK, which stood for, Catholicism. So someone would say, no, maybe RK means Rosh Kolel, or Rabbi Kavanetsky, or whatever, the fact that baptized doesn't mean, so the more indirect you go, but Chazal saw something worse in saying the words, I am an Oved Avodah Zarah, as opposed to implying it, but not saying it. In fact, but let's say when it comes to the Nazis, I don't think it was an issue. If the Nazis came to you and said, are you Jewish? You don't have to tell them you're Jewish. Why? Because that's not what we're talking about here. With the Nazis, it wasn't a religious, it wasn't a theological issue. It was a blood issue. In other words, they didn't care if you believed in God or not. They cared, were you Jewish, your parents, your so therefore there'd be no problem. Denying you Jewish has nothing to do with any theological issues. So I don't think the Nazis, of course you'd lie and tell them you're not Jewish. But in a case where it's a theological issue, so then that's a discussion. The more indirect you go, the better. But that's perhaps an Abizrayu to Avodah Zarah. But how could you have an Abizrayu to Ritzicha? Like you're a little bit pregnant, you murdered someone a little bit, like either the person's dead or not. So, maybe we could say, Chazal consider saras, other things, but they don't write this. Rabbi Yonah writes, you know what Abizraya de Ritzich is? Hamalbim penei chaveiro b'rabim.
That's the Tosfos. So
Yeah.
it's better if you jump to the Tosfos of Nor.
Yeah, it's Rabbi Yonah and Tosfos says it also. In other words, Tosfos is referring to, talks about that really, why isn't we should have 4 things you have to give up your life for. Noach lo shibu. We see that Hamalbim penei chaveiro b'rabim, you should be yarog ve'al. Tosfos say nachanami, you're right. But we don't, it's not mafurish b'kra, so we didn't count it, but Einachinami, it is one of the things. There's a discussion, Rabbi Yonah counts it as Yarog ve'al or as Abizraya de Ritzicha. Halach l'maisa, that's not so clear. It's a discussion whether it's just very serious, not to embarrass. Minimally speaking, it's not something you should be doing. We do it for entertainment value, stam. But it's not something we should be doing, and it's a real shayla halacha, whether it's really Yarog ve'al.
Sorry, and I kind of missed something, but I picked it up now, sorry.
So they point out, so that's what Tosfos, Rabbi Yonah point out. So Rav Shlomo Zalman in the Mincha Shlomo, he says Sorech and whether Yarog ve'al Yavor on Malbim Nechayil Barabim. Then he throws out a couple of questions. He said,
talks about that, like Abi Tamar.
yeah, that's what Yehuda and Tamar is where the post can bring it down in the Gemara, but also the Gemara is also about David. People were taunting David about marriage. What's the halacha of being marrying an Eishes Ish? He says maybe it's Misa, but I can do tshuva. Someone who's Ma'av V'nei Chaveiro doesn't get it, so that's what, there's a God the Gemara, but the poskim seem to hook onto Yehuda and Tamar. They quote that case, but there are other Chazals also. So Rav Shlomo Zalman has some, he says if this is true, that Ma'av V'nei Chaveiro is Yarog ve'al Yavor, so if that's the case, then just like we know, if someone's life is in danger, we know you're Machal Shabbos. That's halacha. If it's Yarog ve'al Yavor to end up causing bizer to someone publicly, then I should be able to Machal Shabbos to prevent someone. Let's say someone fell in the mud and they're walking in a sewer, or make up your own bizayon. So I should be able to go Machal Shabbos and stop this guy. If Malbim Chaveiro Barabim is Yarog ve'al Yavor, so if I can Machal, so it's greater than life, I have to be willing to give up my life for it. So if I can be Machal Shabbos to save someone's life, I should be able to Machal. And he says, but Ein Ra'inu, I've never seen it, and he doesn't think it's true. So what? And he said in second kashi he throws out, he says if Malbim Chaveiro is Yarog ve'al Yavor, he says, so let's say someone's going to a wedding, you're dressed up in your tuxedo, your black ties, whatever, and you're about to bury off your daughter, son, whatever, and you see someone drowning in the pool. There's a pool in the different types of, I know in New York they have them, different places, in Long Island where you have pools in the halls, and you're about to go down, all of a sudden someone's drowning in the pool. Well, maybe I shouldn't have to. If Malbim Chaveiro is Yarog ve'al, I'm going to jump into the pool, be all soaked, embarrassed, and how am I going to look on the video? So you mean you telling me I don't have to embarrass myself to save someone's life? In fact, Rav Shlomo Cougar says, yeah. But Rav Shlomo Zalman just leaves it, so we'll try to come and answer those 2 kashas of Rav Shlomo Zalman. But the shayla is, it seems to be Malbim Chaveiro, according to many Rishonim, is number 4, and it's a very serious question of Yarog ve'al. So the Or Sameh.
It's not just any embarrassment.
Right, it has to be a type of, that's what we're going to get into, yeah, right.
Isn't that Malbim Chaveiro, Barabim, mean you're embarrassing somebody else? Not referring to yourself. But here with a wedding, it's for yourself. So
very good. We'll get to that. That's what Rav Hutner is going to explain that in a minute. But let me just point out this contradiction, then we'll give the answer. So Rav Chanan points this out, or Sameach, others. There seems to be a stira in two different Gemaras. The Gemara in Baba Basra and Daf Tes says, again, you have to make choices in life, not necessarily pleasant ones. 2 people come to your door, and one person is naked and they need clothes. Another person is hungry. Let's assume it's not life and death, but hunger is pain. When we should know from it, but when you're really hungry, it's a real pain. So who do you do? Do you feed the hungry, or do you clothe the naked? So that's a discussion in the Gemara. So we pass in the Shulchan Aruch, it's brought down that we feed the hungry, before we close the naked. So we see from this Gemara, or appears to see from this Gemara, that pain is worse than shame. The pain of the hunger takes precedence over the shame of a person standing there without clothes on. That's the Gemara Bava Basra. There's another Gemara in Sanhedrin, in the 6th parak, I think Mem Hey, in Nigmar Hadin. In fact, interesting, it uses the Lashon V'ahavta l'reacha kamocha, by Misa as well, bar lo Misa Yafa. Even when you're killing someone, there's a din of V'ahavta l'reacha kamocha, and there's a discussion in the Gemara. I think Rabbi Huda the Chachamim, let's assume a woman is being stoned. So the question is, should you stone her with clothes on or without clothes on? What's the issue? Because if you clothes her naked, if you stone her naked, so the fall, she won't have anything buffering her, she'll die quicker, less pain. However, she's going to be sitting there with bizayon, she'll be sitting there, lying there naked. On the other hand, if she has clothes on, she's going to suffer more pain. However, but at least, she'll have her clothes on. So that's a discussion in the Gemara, I think Rabbi Huda Chachamim, on which one's better. Everyone agrees it's bar lo misa yafa. The issue is what is the best way of going. So the conclusion of the Gemara seems to be like the Chachamim, that she should be stoned with clothes on, that better that she have a little more pain and have less bizayon. So from the Gemara in Sanhedrin, it looks like shame is worse than pain. We're more concerned about her shame, and therefore we stone her with her clothes on, and we don't care about the pain. However, when it comes to Gemara and Bava Basra, we seem to be more concerned with the pain of hunger than we are the embarrassment of a person standing there naked.
Hunger could lead to death.
No, right. So that,
and lack of clothes is not going to lead to death.
Yeah, we're assuming it's not, but I'm saying is, but right, how, practically speaking, it's hard to know. When you're in the effort, you'll probably do it, but from a theological, just a concept, assuming it's not a life and death. If it's life and death, there's nothing to talk about. But practically speaking, you might not know. Therefore, you'll just give to the.
This is freezing.
But I'm talking from the theological point of view. The Gemara seems to be saying that the Gemara Bava Basra seems to be saying.
Like the guy, the Rambam, when he talks about that difference in Hilchos Staka, he seems to imply that someone doesn't have any other food. It's like a real ani who has no. It really is very, very hungry.
Yeah, the Chavis Jar points out that let's say your Kohen walks in the Shabbos, he walks through an apartment building, you're visiting and you go into the backyard, and lo and behold, someone dies in the apartment building. So the halach is, we assume, most poskim assume, it's only an issa d'oraisa if you're actually in the same room, but under the same ohel, under the same building, it's only an issa d'rabanan. That's what many poskim write. So we know the halacha is that for kavod abriyos, human dignity, we docha isurim, definitely isurim d'rabanan. The docha all isurim d'rabanan. So the Chavis asks, what about in this case? So the case is it's winter, it's cold, and they can't move the body until after Shabbos. So either he's stuck out in the backyard freezing for the next two, I guess it depends if it's 5 minutes before or Friday night or whatever it is, but he's in a lot of pain from the cold. And the only way to get through is to violate the Yisra D'Rabbanan. So that's what the Chavis Hadis raises. He says, we see from the din of kavod abriyos of shame, so shame is docha Yisra D'Rabbanan. If shame is worse than pain, so then you can't bring a raya. But if whether in this case it's docha and Yisra D'Rabbanan, but if pain is worse than shame, so if you're allowed to do it out kavod abriyos, so when Chavis Jai answers the Shilas, he says, there's no general rule. He's saying
with shame in this issue?
He's saying, here we're talking about pain. So the question is, in Afkamini, he's saying, the Gemara says for shame, kavod abriyos, you're allowed to violate an Issa D'Rabbanan. Right. So if pain is worse than shame, so if shame you could do it, so then the pain of freezing you could also do it. But if shame is worse than pain and you can't actually bring a raya, maybe yes, maybe not. But the Chavis Yah wants to say, you can't bring any principles from this Gemara. Like, it's not telling me a principle. The Gemara Baba isn't telling me pain is worse than shame, categorically. And the Gemara in Sanhedrin is not telling me the opposite. You have to take every case is different. Like this is what I think Rabbi was alluding to. And he points out, it depends. Maybe the case of the Gemara Bavasra, the guy wasn't totally naked. Maybe his clothes were ripped. He had shorts on, a t-shirt, you know, what people walk around normally, you know, but they might consider half naked. But so you have to go through every. So the Chavis wants to say there's no real klal. You can't say shame or pain. You have to know the case. Some like in economy, there's no stira. Maybe it's negligible, the pain from falling with the clothes on. How much difference does it make? You know, I don't know. But I'm saying they're assuming it's not that much. So then they'd say go with the shame is worse. So then you have to know weigh in each. That's what the Chavis Jar writes. So Rav Hutner, along those lines, he says like that, but a little differently. He wants to make a distinction between his pain. When we talk about pain is usually, you know, physical pain. You know, you go to the dentist and they drill in the cavities, you know, today without the medicine or whatever it is, and you take different things. So it's, you know, when we talk about pain, we talk about physical thing. When we talk about shame, he's saying that's more the spirit of a person, the nefesh. It's a yerida in a person's dignity. In other words, along the lines you're about to say, that let's say, for instance, you go to wherever it is, dentist, I'm not picking on them, well, David's not here, so it's okay. David Byrne, he's a dentist. Oh. But so let's say whatever the incident is, do you feel more pain at the time? Well, let's say I think about it a week later. You know how painful it was sitting. So you can even laugh about it now. You don't really care. If you don't have the pain anymore, the pain's not an issue. But let's say someone embarrassed you and they did something to you. Sometimes when you think about it 2 days later, some people 2 years later, but hopefully not that long. But when you think about it later, sometimes you work yourself up so much, you're more upset now that, oh, I didn't think about why she's so upset, you know, because why? Because it's a yerid in the human dignity in terms of what, you know, as they point out, maybe sometimes it's better just to give a smack to your kid than it is when you trash you talk down to him and you humiliate the child, etc. The one's the nefesh and one's the physical. That's sort of, there's a whole discussion on it. So he says like this: there's a fundamental difference, I think is what you were alluding to, between who's causing the shame. So let's say, for instance, someone's a married couple. You know, we said Shalom Bayis wins. You go with the Nir Shabbos, and let's say the husband's doing something around the house. He drops the dishes, he drops the light, he does something, he breaks something, and he says, you know what? I'm such a shlemiya or shlemaza, whichever word it is. I'm one of them. And he says, okay, that's fine. And about an hour later, he hears his wife talking on the phone to her mother, his mother-in-law. You know what? My husband's such a shlemaza. And then after you say, what are you telling your mother? Why, you said it about yourself. Like, I'm just telling her what you... There's a big difference between...
It's too realistic.
It's a big difference. There's a big difference between, you know, like certain groups don't use a certain name. But if you're among the group, that's okay. But if you call them that, it's different. So similarly, you find that same thing, if you slip over a banana peel, maybe it's funny, you even laugh about it. But if someone's like sets you up and you're 100 people looking, it's a totally, because that's a yerida of the dignity. That's what the Rav Hutner explains. It depends what type of shame. He says, if you're talking about shame, like Hamal B'nei Chavero, someone, that's much worse than pain. That type of shame where someone, like here, based in humiliate, maybe it's part of it, to be humiliated publicly, so then you're much better off having a little more pain. But in the case of the paupers, no one did it to him. That's just unfortunately whatever the scenario is. He doesn't have a lot of clothes. It's more self-inflicted, or I'm not blaming him, but I'm saying, but no one else, no one did anything directly to him. So when someone, so it depends. That's why. So those cases are in kashas. The case of Shlomo Zalman asked. He said if Mal B'nei Chavor is Yarog Yavor, so then he asked, so just like you give a Machal Shabbos to save someone's life, you should be able to Machal Shabbos to save someone's life. No, that's not. In Achinami, maybe if someone else is putting him, here's the case where he fell in the mud, no one did it to him, that's a different type of shame. Or in the case where I jump into the pool to save someone's life, you could argue that's not shame at all. But even if no one even knows what you did, those are things where you did it to yourself. That's the Yisod, Rafutna wants to, elaborate on the Chavisar, that it depends. There is no set rule, shame or pain, but, we see from the Gemara and Baba Basra, it seems to imply pain, from another Gemara shame, but the rule is you have to know the different types of pain and the different types of shame. So there's a discussion in Rishonim, Achronim, in terms of Seder Kedima, in terms of good things, Nicham Avelim, Bikar Cholim, so too we find a similar discussion in the negative side in terms of what's worse, alleviating someone's pain or shame, and that whole discussion on that.
So, is there an example where you could Machal Shabbos to prevent somebody's shame? We're saying there is no such.
No, we're
example.
saying there's not, because the shame is that's not shame. You say that somebody fell in the mud, so it wasn't like, and it's too late. Once you pushed in the mud, the shame is already there. I guess one could argue. I guess we could get into specifics at what point.
Let's say somebody's walking along the road without clothes on, not because of their own fault. Something occurred to them that happened. So, and you don't want to take off your clothes to give to them. So you say, I'll get in my car and I'll drive home to get your clothes.
Yes, then you get into, like Amir with Nachri, you get, but strictly speaking, we don't, but obviously it doesn't mean you don't try to do everything you can to try to.
But I don't know, where's the difference though?
No, the difference is no one, it depends, unless, that's a question mark, unless you want to argue you can. He's saying, based on that, depends how you're going to find Malva B'nei Chavei or Barabim. I'm not saying no for sure. It's hard to put a specific case, but that's what Rav Shlomo Zalman throws out. He says, I haven't seen it, but maybe a case where there, if it's a real case of, if we could come up with the Heicha Timsa of Abba B'nei Chavei or Barabim, and somehow then, maybe, but the classical case of saving someone's life, we all know you jump into the car and you drive them to the hospital. And I guess it's harder, not that it's not true, but then I guess it's harder to actually get that fine point, because then because you can't just, on a little ambusha to start, throwing out the shell, it's much harder when you don't have a real measuring stick. So I guess, mice, it's very hard to implement, but you're right. Fundamentally, in theory, if we could actually get it to Mal B'nei Chaveiro, and we're assuming it's the Yargavay Yavor, one could make an argument why, you could do some type of thing on Shabbos to save the person.
It depends a little bit on the mores of society. Like we have an example in Shmuel Beis, they cut off half their beards, and they were so ashamed they couldn't come back to Yerushalayim for months. And which was, they couldn't cut off the other half either, because you just couldn't come to Yerushalayim without a beard.
So if somebody's cutting off someone else's beard,
right,
and you can't stop them without being Mechal Shabbos, that would be a good example.
Yes, or where the norm is, exactly. It depends what's considered the norm, and then is that considered, two things, is that considered normal, is that considered a normal concern? And then, what's the norm in society? You're right, today, I'm sure it'd be very embarrassing to someone showed up in B'nai Brak or Meir Sharm or whatever, you didn't have a beard, let's say they shaved this rubs, and they show up and that's like
the Nazis.
That's worse than, that's like, it's Mal B'nei Chaveiro, whether it's physically or not, right, what the Nazis did, or in terms of breaking, a lot of times they did that was also part of breaking the spirit, as Rav Hutner was talking about. It wasn't even so much the physical part, it was trying to break them down.